Doing well. And my name is Mary Jed Wisiak, and I am here coming to you live from Holding the Hope Central in Battleground, Washington. I have my little sparkly birds in the background. My daughter-in-law gave me that for Christmas last year, so I just put it there. Um, so I am so excited that you're here. We're talking about advocacy, and I've been an advocate in one way or another for at least 30 years, and I really kind of flinch when I say that. I lied on the other promotion and said 20 or 25 years because I don't want to admit that I have a child that's 42 years old. But so I've been advocating on his behalf and on my, and it's impossible to advocate for myself. If anybody knows that, it's really hard to advocate for yourself. It's always nice to have somebody else there with you. But all of the things that I've learned over the years have come to play. And I was in a spot a while ago, and it was not a very good spot. And I thought, I have to do something. I have to give back. I have to do something to be able to re-engage with myself, re-engage with my skills, re-engage with my people, and just re-engage. And so I thought, what could I give that isn't going to require too much effort, right? What can I give off the top of my head that I can just talk to people and still be helpful? And I just was struck with this concept of advocacy. So I put together a 4-part advocacy series. The first part was just kind of an overview of the whole series, and we talked about what is advocacy. And then I broke it into 3 parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to go through, and part of what I'm going to do today is take you through what we did in November, what we did in December, and what we're going to do this month. And you're going to kind of see how it all flows together. And then, of course, everything I do is infused with the guiding principles of recovery, SAMHSA's guiding principles of recovery. So I kind of took that and my definition. I just think that if you take those guiding principles of recovery, or you take your whatever you think your concept of recovery is, and you overlay it onto whatever you're doing, it's going to give it more depth and more purpose, and you're going to really, it's easier to stay aligned with your values, right? So anyway, so that's kind of what I always do. And of course, so that's what I did with this. And I had so much fun. I put on the one day, one Monday morning, I put on, I have a turntable with vinyl, and I put on Gracie's Slick, and I just was, I'm sure the neighbors were quite confused. And I just put the big paper on the wall, and I just started, and I just created this whole series, and it was so much fun. So let's get started, and I will take you through everything that we have so far. Okay, it's only been what, 4 years now that we've been doing this, and so I don't have any video clips, but we're going to go ahead and optimize for it anyway. And I'm going to go over here and pull up my PowerPoint slides. Now, I kept this really basic, right? Because this was just kind of stripped down. Here's what I know. And so this is actually part 3 of here's what I know. So but before we, I also really want to tell you a little bit about me. Holding the Hope, I have been in business now for 18 years, coming up on 19 years. That really startled me when I figured that one out. And so Holding the Hope is a company that I do workforce development in the behavioral health industry. So I do a lot of trainings. And if you go to my website, holdingthehope.com, you'll get a really comprehensive picture of what I do. The other thing that we have is the peersupporttrainingcenter.com. And what that is it's a place where you can go for training, either on demand, because like trainings like this that I'll record and I'll just pop up there. And so you can watch it anytime you like. And we have it, we just turned the certificates on. I thought they've been on all the time. But you get a certificate, so you can use it for your continuing education. If your state has needs, we can help you with that. And then I also have another on-demand product, which is our CARES Toolkit. And that's basically 12 hours of training. So long before COVID, we did an online conference, and we recorded all the workshops, and we put it together in a toolkit. We're calling the CARES Toolkit, Essential Skills for Peer Supporters. And there's, like I said, there's 12 different modules. And then what we did was we went with each module, And we did a deep dive and we found all kinds of resources that go with that model. So go with that topic. So for instance, if the topic is strengths-based, we went in and found a bunch of articles or tools or ways to help a person become more strengths-based in addition to just the video. So the toolkit's there. You can get a singular one, you can get a corporate package. It comes with some training and consulting. And then finally is the recovery alignment is my newest project that I absolutely am in love with. And it's a 12-week learning collaborative where we bring together people in leadership and we help. It starts off with a survey from the Yale Recovery Knowledge Inventory Scale, and we take your staff through that, and then I create a personalized report and shows strengths and opportunities for you in your agency to really places where you can really infuse recovery principles into your policies, into your practices, into your HR commitments, into everything you do. I can with this report, you'll find ways like. And then we invite you to pick one project and we just work for 12 weeks. At that point, it's probably about 9 weeks left. And we just work as a collaborative to help you achieve that one goal in your agency. And that just kind of, as we know, right? You change one thing and then everything changes. Like God forbid you should paint your bedroom because then you need a new bedspread and new curtains and new flooring, and right? So that's kind of how that works. And it is so much fun. And I really love it. So that's me. And I just, part of also the reason I was doing this was this whole project, right? If it's self-care for me, then I had to kind of take an inventory and go, you know what? I really do have a lot of stuff and I really do know a lot. And so I'm excited to be able to offer it to people in a format that they can, most of these are just on demand and you can go and find what you need and utilize it when you need it. So that's that. And if you have any questions about any of this, of course, you can always contact me. So I'm so happy that people are kind of coming in. This is the foundation of my beliefs. And I got this definition from another peer who quietly said it to me. We were having lunch and I said something about hope, and it was at one of those conferences where you got all those people at the table, and she just said, that reasonable expectation that things can get better. And I grabbed hold of that so hard, because that's really how I feel about hope. It's not one of those big, religious concepts that you have to commit to. It's just this thing. And it's so accessible to us the most when we are at our lowest, because we have a reasonable expectation that things could get better. So when someone says something like, I just don't think things could get much worse, that's a really hopeful statement, right? So when people come back for services over and over and over again, that is hope, because they believe that things can get better and they're coming to us to help them make things better. So this is what I believe, and this is what's infused through the work that I do. So the reason this is here is because as an advocate, and in addition to a teacher, I started off as an advocate and I had to teach people what their rights were and how the system worked so that they could understand how to get what they need. You can't go to the DMV to pay your property taxes, right? You got to go to the right place. You got to talk to the right people. So you have to understand how that system works. And so as I was teaching this, I realized that I really love teaching. And so that was how that transition came about. But hope is what is at the foundation of everything that I do. And so that's why this is here. The other thing that I really love is that this is a lotus blossom, and lotus blossoms are anchored in and feed off of and thrive and are beautiful because of the gunk and the muck that's at the bottom of the pool, right? So all of that dead stuff that comes off all the plants and floats and sinks to the bottom, that's what's going to feed that lotus blossom, and that's where they get all of their glory. So that's a symbol also to me that as an advocate, my experiences are what's going to feed what, the stuff that fell off and no longer serves me can still feed me and can still motivate me and kind of guide me to where I'm going. All right, so these are some great ways. As I said, this is a 4-part series. We're in part 3. And it's one of the best ways to get out of this series is to join the VIP room. Some of you are there, which basically it's just, register and get the link. And you come on in. Everybody's a VIP. And then also, if you have a project that you're thinking about or something that you want to do, it's really kind of nice to have a context so that this stuff that I'm teaching you isn't just theory, but it really can come down and you can put it into practice. Yesterday's homework or December's homework was all about getting your team together and talking to your team. And so I really hope that if you have a team or if you have a project, you don't know, none of us do this alone. So get some folks that can work with you on this, some like-minded folks, and maybe people that wouldn't necessarily come together. You can create a partnership that can be really powerful. And then the other thing is do the homework. It's not much and it doesn't take long, but it's just a way for you to organize your thoughts and for you to really kind of take what I'm saying and put it in the context of whatever your issue is. So here we go, 3-part series, commitment. Here's where we are. We're in understanding. And then because for me, recovery, I went to a conference once, or it was a retreat. It was a 12-step retreat. And the retreat masters talked about sanity. And he's like, what is that? What is that? And he's like, it's if you can work, if you can love, if you can play, you're fine. Just go. And I thought, oh my gosh, how can I take those 3 concepts and kind of convert them in a way that they fit in with what I believe about recovery? And I kind of like purpose, relationships, and joy. So when we're talking about commitment, understanding, and implementation, purpose and relationships and joy fit really well there. And so we're going to talk about how those things are going to help you, like knowing your purpose is going to help you with your commitment. Understanding relationships is going to help you with understanding what you need to do to create this change that you want to see. And then the implementation, if it's not joyful, why are you doing it? If you're not having a good time, you're doing it wrong. All right. So the first one we did was we talked about advocacy and what was the different kinds of advocacy. And I am not going to go through this right now. You can absolutely watch the replay that's posted, or you can just read it slower at your own pace. I talked about the different types of advocacy and kind of how each one works. I talked about the principles of advocacy. Why are we doing this? How are we doing this? And what are some things that you need to have in place before you move forward? And then I gave you some homework, and that was really to identify your 5 top values, to identify your superpower, and to create a statement. And I do not have it with me here. Oh, wait, yes, I do. Wait, what? Wait, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. There it is. So I have my statement, right? On my top 5 values. If you join my email list, you get an email. The first thing you get is an email from me that tells you what my values are, so that you can understand what my values are. And for me, what I realized was that my superpower was really connection and connecting with people and connecting with, but it's so interesting because what I've discovered is, as I've kind of, gone about doing things different the last few months, is how disconnected I became and how that really affected me. So I think we're all still kind of trying to get over the pandemic. And so values and then your purpose. So the statement that I have is very simple, and I worked on it for a while and I have it. And it's, I am a joyful, kind, inspirational woman, gratefully determined to empowering myself and others now. That's my statement. And that really helps ground me. So if you want to know more about this, this is like, $20,000 worth of therapy right here on this page. But again, I really would invite you, so that if you're going into what you want to do, you have to be able to know yourself and know why you're doing it. You have to know what your values are, so you know where to set your boundaries. So this is really important work to do. And what it does is it just reminds you that advocacy is not a knee-jerk reaction. It is a well thought out process. So then in December, we talked about um, uh, I don't remember. Oh, we talked about commitment. And so that was all about getting a team together and understanding what you were getting into, why you were getting into it. What if you don't get what you want? What if you do get what you want, right? What do you know how to take yes for an answer? And so the homework was really all about communicating with your team, um, and and if you don't have a team, find a team, and so at least one other person. So that was the December homework. And I don't know if anybody was on here now that was on here in December, but I'm wondering if anybody that is on here now um, did their December homework. I don't think folks that were on here before. Willetta, were you on here last month? I don't think you were. No. Willetta? No, I don't think so. So I hope that the folks that were on here last month did their homework. And if you're watching the replay, good job on doing your homework. And you can share your homework with somebody, with your team. You can talk about, yes, here we did our homework. All right. So let's go ahead and share again. So that brings us to where we are right now in January, and we're going to talk about the next one, which is understanding. Oh, wait, so this is the commitment that we talked about last month, the December. I should have moved that slide below this. But these are the two commitment slides. Really understanding, using your personal experience as a motivator. Here's the thing. When I was working as a mental health advocate, a mental health ombudsman, they called it at the time, it was a person to help resolve conflicts. And it was a neutral third party that helps resolve conflicts. Not an advocate. It's a distinction. But what I want to understand is, I want you to understand that what I learned early on is that knowing what you want, what do you want? How are you going to know you're done at the end of this is really important. And that's what you have to make a commitment to. Because I think that what happens is we get a resolution to a part of it, or we get some kind of a placation, or we get something. And we think, okay, we're done. Or we cause a scene and we get somebody to say, gosh, I'm really sorry that happened. But nothing really gets resolved. So it's really important to know what is it that you want when you're done, so you can determine what level of commitment that you have, and is it achievable? People might say, yeah, that's never going to happen. So what else do you want? Like, what part of that do you want? But again, the same thing is people who don't know that it can't be done often get it done. So I've seen that time and time again. People that have been in the system forever are like, oh gosh, that can never get done. And then somebody new comes along and it gets fixed, because they don't know the barriers are there. They just plow right through it and get things done. So then here's what we talked about: work, love, play, and or purpose, relationship, joy. That's what I've got. Talked about purpose the last time. So now we're going to talk about understanding, because that's where we are. And the reason that I have this here the way it is because one of the most important things you have to understand about your situation is money. I hate to say follow the money. That's easy to say, but it's so true. I don't care if it's a small agency, if it's a statewide agency, if it's a large, huge corporation, if it's a small peer-run organization, it doesn't matter. Understanding how the money works is critical, not just, to this one project, but to your credibility. And also, it gives you an entirely different perspective on the issue that you're facing. If you really understand, how things work from a financial perspective, then you would be able to see things the way that the policymakers see them. You'll be able to understand how things work, and you'll be able to not only understand how they work, but you'll be able to then have a conversation with people that they realize that they can't lie to you because you know the truth. So understanding, like say it's federal money, those are some things that federal money cannot be spent on. And so maybe part of your advocacy is going to be finding additional monies, understanding where the money came from, and what are the rules around using it, and why is it important. All of that is going to be really, really critical to the success of your project. So just make sure that when it comes to this whole understanding piece, you know the background and the big picture. And the big picture is always financial. Is it always financial? The big picture always has a financial aspect to it. Let's put it that way. So, so when you know the financial aspect of it, you've got a good pick. You've got a good decision, a good basis to make a decision. So the other thing that I think is really important when you're understanding is to really know the history of an issue. And I'm going to use an example for me that I completely failed on. I mean, I didn't completely fail, but I didn't follow my own advice here. But I'm going to use an example of the Youth Suicide Prevention Program. Now, the Youth Suicide Prevention Program was a freestanding nonprofit, not a program of any other agency. It was a freestanding nonprofit, and it was started maybe 25 years ago. And I knew the history of this organization, and I contracted with them for probably 11 or 12 years, providing youth suicide prevention training, consulting support in Southwest Washington. And that was something that happened during the school year, and then there was no contract during the summer, so I could pursue a lot of state contracts and do really fun stuff then as well. So understanding the history of that organization really helped understand what happened when the organization imploded. And so really what happened with the organization, it didn't really implode. It just gradually faded. And then at the end, the state individuals at a state agency just made a unilateral decision to take the money and give it and use it otherwise. And so there was other options, but given the history of what was going on, I was able to counteract a lot of the misinformation that they gave legislators, and I was able, nobody cared, right? But I was able to like at least say, hey, here's what really happened, and then the legislators go, well, this is what this state staff says, and I'm like, well, okay, but that's not what really happened at all. So understanding how that organization came into being, knowing the story of what happened with regards to transitional leadership transition, what were the politics at play, what were the policies at play, where did I fall into that? Like, where did my self-serving, or what was my personal history with this organization? And then what were the barriers? And so, and then also, I had to kind of go back to the first one, which was commitment. And I really didn't have a commitment. I wasn't fighting for the life of the organization. I was advocating against the unilateral decisions that were made internally by a state policymaker, a state employee who just decided we're going to do this different, without any kind of input from the community. So, and to this day, that as far as I know, it's still the way it is. Now, what happened was one person, as what always happens, frequently there are families of people that are injured by suicide or injured by an issue, and they'll go to the legislature. And this particular case, they got $1 million set aside, and this was 25 years ago. They got $1 million set aside for youth suicide prevention. At the demise of the organization, it was down to, I think, $36,000 a year, which is, budget dust. You can't do anything with that, really. And so one particular person took on the task of starting the nonprofit out of her bedroom. Is this familiar? Does this sound familiar? This is very classic. Very good-hearted, well-intentioned person. And they did a great job of building the organization. And it really was built on personalities. It was built on connections. It was built on relationships with the Department of Health policymakers, the internal employees who were going to support this and supported it. But the money was continually undermined, and there was no direct legislative policy that said this money goes here. It's just like, here's some money, and then it was up for grabs. And then understanding the agency involved is really understanding the people involved and the relationships that they had. The policies that were at play had to do with the internal policies at the Department of Health that directly affected the viability of this organization. What happened was, when the original founder retired, she didn't leave. And so then when the new executive director asked her to leave, it got really public, it got really political, it got really ugly, and it never survived that. Even though those of us out in the field were just doing our jobs, right? Just doing our jobs. But there was like emails going back and forth with people CC'd everywhere. And it just got really, it got really messy. And there was lots of misinformation flying around. And as I said, those of us that were contractors were still just doing our jobs, trying to keep kids alive. Eventually, the state, there was money that was allocated directly for suicide prevention, and it went to a different agency. And so the new director at this agency at that point, that really broke her. And she's like, okay, I'm done. Because she had fought for this money, and then it went to a different agency. Politics, right? So, and personalities, yeah, maybe, right? And so misinformation, people have opinions, and they just kind of, the money follows those opinions. So when a small amount of money went somewhere else, I was like, how you can't just, yeah, okay, I get that it's just a small amount of money, but they were like, we're not doing an RFP for $36,000 a year. That's not even going to happen. And so they just made this unilateral decision. And so I did what I do, is I notified the authorities and said, this seems really unilateral. It's not based on any public policy. It's not really based on anything. Yeah, great, you gave this money to other coalitions that do good work, but that's youth suicide prevention money, and now it's going to drug prevention, right? Which I guess you could make a stretch and say that is suicide prevention. So that is just one story of you really need to understand, how did everything come about? How did things fall apart? Where did the money come from? Where's the money going? Who are the individuals involved? And so for me, what my commitment level was, I was not going to bid on this. So I had to make it really clear in my advocacy, I'm not going to bid on this. I have no intention. I am not fighting for you to give this money to me. I am fighting for this money to stay focused on youth suicide prevention. So I had to get really clear about that. And then I also had to decide, how long am I going to fight this? A couple of legislative letters back and forth, and then they were just willing to walk away after, getting, they contact the internal personnel, and they say, oh no, here's how it happened. And then they get back to me and say, well, here's what they said. And I replied and said that, well, that's not true, but it never went anywhere. And I didn't take it anywhere else. I could have continued. I chose not to. That was a commitment choice that I had made previously. So I knew how much further down the road I was going to take this. And I knew, and the whole thing was just really upsetting. But at the end, I was like, done, right? Okay, this is how far I've decided to take it. This is a commitment I made to it. This is a commitment I've made to myself. So we're done now. And that was really helpful for me to have made that decision previously. This is how far I'm going to go. I know what the barriers are. I can try to educate these people. I don't really have a lot of partners, because everybody took 3 giant steps back from this organization when the infighting went public. And so that's just a little example of understanding the story and understanding the history so that you can make decisions about how much you want to stay involved. And also so that you can, if it's not as messy and ugly as that, and it is something that you really want to be able to move forward with, you can educate people and say, listen, you have a misunderstanding of what happened. Let me show you what really happened, or let me show you the history of this situation has always been X. And in the last 5 years, we've kind of taken a change, but we'd like to bring it back to Y, whatever. But understanding that is really going to be helpful. The other thing that's really important to understand your history is your personal history with the organization and your personal history with the people involved. This is all about people. Whenever you're doing advocacy, it's all about people. It's all about relationships. And so understanding what is your history and what is the people that's involved, what is their history? Do they have ego attached to this? Is this like, if your story moves forward, does it make them look bad? Does it make them look good? What's going on here with what you're bringing forward? And so you need to understand that personal history. And also, if you have a personal history with the person involved in all of this, let's say I had a personal history with this one particular state employee. I didn't, but let's say I did. That was really going to impact, right? Whether her reaction to me. So history, knowing the history of an issue can be really important in how you plan your next phase, which is implementation. So yeah, all right. The other thing that's really important to know are the politics. Are there specific laws that come into play? And what do those laws say? And what agency involved? And do they get along? Right. So at this point, you had like the University of Washington, and they have a very strong suicide prevention program called Forefront. And then there's the Department of Health, and then there's the Youth Suicide Prevention Program. Those are the agencies that are involved at this point. And then the legislature got involved with some money. They were, I don't know if they were aware of the internal politics that were going on. I don't know, but knowing who these people are and what their relationship is and what their history is going to be really helpful for you. Because let's say that you come into an organization and you say, listen, I've got a great idea. And let's say the Department of Health, I come in and I go, listen, I've got a great idea. And I really think you can support this. And I think it's in alignment with your agency. And they say, wow, that's fantastic. And then you say, and I want to introduce you to my partner that I'm working with. And they hate your partner, or your partner has caused them problems in the past, unbeknownst to you, that project's going nowhere. I don't care how good an idea it is, it's not going anywhere. So you have to know who gets along and who doesn't get along. And you have to be able to finesse that. You also need to understand that people want to know, how is this going to benefit me? Is this going to help me in my career? Is this going to help me put forward my values that I believe in so much? Is this going to, how is this going to benefit me? So here's an example. Jimmy Carter, Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, no, he's the new one. Anwar Sadat, I don't know. In the Israeli peace talks, Jimmy Carter went to one of the players at the end, and they didn't come to a resolution. And Jimmy Carter rides his bike up on the last morning when everybody was going to leave, and he says to the leader from Israel, "I'm so sorry. I was really hoping that you could tell your grandchildren you were able to achieve this." And the guy burst into tears and signed the documents, because Jimmy knew that what his values was for his children and his grandchildren to live in peace. And so that was a huge, huge breakthrough for them. So how do people, what drives them? What's the benefit to the people? What are the risks to the people that are involved? So I just did something this morning. I got an email, and as I was typing this email, I thought, oh, this is a great example for today's workshop. I got an email from the Healthcare Authority, and they want to know opinions. They're gathering data on the procurement process. How do you know about contracts that are available? What's good at it? What are some of the barriers that are available when working with the state? And so I was very candid in my reply. I don't currently have a state contract, but I talked about previous state contracts that I had. And I didn't give it a lot of thought. I just simply replied. Some of the things I said are probably not going to put me in the good graces of the people that are holding all the money at the state. And that was just kind of something that I said. Now, nothing that I said was personal, and nothing that I said was untrue, and nothing that I said was mean or hateful. It was just, it seems to be that one of the things I said was that recovery seems to be a talking point more than an actual value that's infused into the way things are done. That's the truth. And the other thing is that none of that is a surprise. People are going to read that and go, oh, that's Mary, because they know who I am and they know what I stand for. And this is not new. These are not new complaints that I've been making. And so I knew the politics, and I did it anyway. And so we'll see what happens. Probably nothing ever again. But that's okay, because everything I said was in alignment with my values. And it wasn't this big, deep, traumatic thing where I, made this huge declaration. It was just send. And I'm not sorry I did it, because I knew the politics, because I knew the people, because I understood what they were trying to achieve, and I understood the relationships, and I knew the history, and I knew all that, and so I did that, and it may be very helpful for other people who are going to come behind me and contract with the healthcare authority. So the other thing is to know the power structure. You could you have a contact with somebody and you like working really hard on this project, and it gets to the next level and they immediately put a stop to it. No. And the reason for that is that it conflicts with the boss's benefits and risks, right? So not only do you need to know this person that I'm working with, what are their benefits and risks, but what about their boss? And what about the agency itself? So who's in charge, and who are their boss, and everybody has a boss. I don't care who it is. Everybody has a boss. So it's a rare person that can say, I'm gonna do this because it's the right thing to do, even though I know there's huge risks to me personally and professionally. Case in point, 30 some years ago, when I believe it was President Clinton put together some gun control measures, and every single person that voted for that, Republican that voted for that, lost their seat in the next round. They believed it was the right thing to do, and it was at great personal risk to them. So we have to know who's in charge. We have to know who their boss is. We have to know what benefits them and what doesn't. And then you also have to understand what is the agency's values. So, if you're talking about the Department of Recovery, theoretically, their professed values would be to help people get well. And then, and so they're doing everything that they understand to do to help people get well. And then, but their real values might be around saving money and helping people stay out of the hospital. Understanding what those values are and how that works with what you want is going to be really helpful in how you ask for what you want, or whether you ask for what you want. And does this situation that you're involved in align with this agency's professed values? So when I go to the Department of Health and I say, where's the money for youth suicide prevention? What are you doing with it? Your values are, here's your annual or 5-year plan on suicide prevention. Where's the money that aligns with this? Then we can use their values to help them move forward in their stated goals. The other thing that I think is really important when you're advocating is to know the power structure, understand it, but don't just use it as a weapon, right? We want to use it in a way that we can be helpful so that we can really say, listen, this is where this came from. I was in that meeting when we made this decision. I said that on more than one occasion, and people look at me and go, what? I go, yeah, I was in that meeting when this decision was made. And so the way that you're moving forward is not in alignment with this original decision that was made. And we just tweak it this way, and it will be. It just goes in a little bit of a different direction. So understanding what the professed values are and understanding the intentions of people. And really, I think sometimes policymakers have great intentions and they just can't quite get there because there's so much opposing pressure. And there's just so many agendas. Everybody's got an agenda. So you need to, coming in with yet another weapon is not going to be helpful. We need to be able to really come in and say, I have something that can help you align with what's going to be important. I think that we have some things in common, but you're not going to know that if you don't understand the power structure, if you don't understand who's involved, and you don't understand what's going on with them. And it doesn't take a long time. It does take some time, though, for you to have conversations with people and talk to them about, what's your experience with, or who's in charge and what do you know about them? And talk to several different people, not just people that have your shared opinions or shared political and opinions, but talk to several different people. Talk to people that you don't normally agree with, and find out what's the situation and how are things rolling out. Because, here's the thing also with me, I've been out of the advocacy movement internally for a while. So I can't really speak to what's going on at the state anymore because I don't know. I think that it's been changed and streamlined and there aren't a lot of opportunities to get involved. And so the opportunities that do come along, I don't hear about it, whatever, right? I'm down here doing my thing. And so if I were going to take on something at the state, the first thing I would do is really educate myself about how things have changed since the last time I was into it up to my knees. And I would really I would have to kind of look at it and go, okay, who's in charge now? And how does this, and just really realign my thinking around what's going on. And then, so then the next thing though, is that as you're doing this, you really need to be aware of kind of what are our sources. You need to understand all of this stuff about your source. So you want to be careful of internal gossip within an agency. What are they going to say about you and about the situation? And also, are the people that you're getting this information from, are they just gossiping, or are they really giving you information about insights into this situation that could help you? The other thing that can be kind of a derailment are side deals. So you're coming forward and you're like, listen, we want this, we want this, we want this. And then all of a sudden, there's this whole side deal that popped up. An example of that is and it wasn't a bad thing, but as peer organizations are moving forward and we want contracts to provide training, and we're saying why is this money going to Washington State University? We want this money to do training. Well, the reason that the money was going to Washington State University is because it was a state agency and they didn't require a RFP. Those can be expensive. So they created a training center, peer workforce development, peer workforce alliance, right there at the Washington State University with a few folks working it. And so that was kind of a side deal that just happened. And then they were able to just kind of funnel some projects over to that. We want to do this project, so we'll just kind of give it to those folks. We want to run a conference, so we're going to give it to those folks. And it was really interesting. It made sense, right? When you understood the politics and you understood how the money works and you understood all of it, it made sense. But watch out for them, right? Because if you don't know what's coming, you could wind up with a little egg on your face. But the other thing is that you might be the one that makes the side deal, right? You might have, somebody's coming for you. Somebody's coming forward with all of these things that because you know the history and stuff. And so you know that your policymaker is really stressed out or your boss is really stressed out. And you can just go to them and say, listen, let me do this. And then that will make this person happy. And it's what you want. So the problem gets resolved in a way that makes everybody happy. Don't be afraid of side deals, but don't be slimy about them either. So the other thing that I think is really interesting is, and this is something that advocates early on, they come in and they make a big splash. Their issue is relevant, their issue is valid, their issue is real. And then they make it, they don't know what they want to resolve it. Or they aren't willing to, they don't really understand the system well enough to understand what it's going to take to resolve the issue. And so they just settle for being placated. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. We would love to have you on a committee. If you give me your email, I will contact you and we will sort this out. And they're like, why, thank you. Yeah, no, right? No, that's not enough, right? But you need to know that before you go into it. You need to have, no, this is what I want resolved. I want you to make a commitment to A, B, and C. Right. And so understanding what it looks like to be placated is going to really help you stay focused and not get side railed. Because then you leave you feeling like, wait a minute, what happened? I don't understand what happened. I didn't get what I wanted, but everything seems to be over. So I don't understand that. So, and then of course, publicly they have acknowledged you and all of this, and it's in the record that they're all going to work together, but then they never follow up. So one of the things I have about avoiding placation is you never leave one meeting without scheduling the next one, right? So if you're in a public meeting and you're giving some testimony, then you give the testimony and you leave. But if you're in a public hearing and the people say, oh, we would love to have you work on that, then in the public hearing say, great, when would you like to talk about this? And I mean, try to get a commitment right then and there so it's in the record. If it's a private meeting, you don't walk out until you have another one scheduled. You just whip out your phone. When's a good time for you? I'll do this and this and this and bring it to the next meeting, and you do that, and bring it to the next meeting, and we'll see how far we got. So that's really a great way to hold people to what they're saying, because sometimes people say things just to get you out of their room. And so being able to take what they say, and they might also be very well-intentioned and super excited to finally have an ally in this issue, but they're also really busy. So you want to be able to set the next appointment, help them, and you do your part, they do their part, and you come together, and in the next meeting, you make some additional steps towards the resolution of the issue. I'm talking a lot. It's my favorite thing to do. So this, if we talk about recovery, and we're talking about how can we infuse recovery principles into this advocacy practice, and we're looking at really understanding how things work, then if we're going to look at, then that's where relationships fit perfectly, right? Purpose, relationships, joy. Relationships fit perfectly in this understanding piece. You really need to understand when it comes to relationships and how people are reacting to you or responding to your requests. It may or may not be personal. They might be like, that's a fantastic idea. I will be honest with you. There are advocates across the country that if they are involved in an issue, I will not be involved in it. Just because we don't share the same values, we don't share the same communication style, we don't share the same approach, and it's not helpful for me to be involved in that. So In that particular case, it's not really personal. It's just that I just understand that that's not how I advocate. And so I'm not going to get involved with that issue if that person is there. The other thing I think that's really important is as we talked about last month, is to really lean on your team. Now, you might not know the people that are involved, but the people that are your colleagues and allies in this issue, they might know people, or they, hey, listen, my cousin is married to her neighbor. Seriously, I've had this happen. And her neighbor says, you're like, oh my God. And you can get information, or you can get a clarifying, they have part of the story that maybe you didn't have. So lean on your team and your connections. So that would be like an external person, right? For support, debriefing, perspective. But then also, it would be great if, like, say, if I were, and I am not, if I were going to start advocating to start another youth suicide prevention program, something similar to that, a statewide youth suicide prevention organization, then what I would want to have somebody internal at the Department of Health, or at the Department of, or the Healthcare Authority, or somewhere. I'd want to have an internal person on my team, officially or unofficial, that's going to tell me, that's going to be able to take the temperature internally and say, oh dear God, if you bring that forward now, it will go nowhere because 3 people just quit yesterday, or whatever. They're going to tell you what's going on, so that you can have that internal insight and advice as to what's going on, and to whether or not this is a good time or a bad time, or who's the right person, or whatever you like. Here's an example. A friend of mine was communicating with somebody, and she was really frustrated with the level of communication that she was getting. And finally, I mean, she didn't say that to anybody, but she just was like, what is with these one-word answers? Why is he blowing me off like this? Finally, somebody said, she said, oh, I'm going to contact so-and-so. And they replied and said, just remember that he does pretty much all of his communications from his BlackBerry. This was a while ago. And so he's just going to give you like really short answers. And she's like, oh, that's what it is. It just doesn't want to type it. It's not what he's thinking a whole bunch more. He just don't want to type it. Isn't that a good insight to have? So you're only going to get that from insiders. So have that on. And then here's my next one. So I have big papers that I'm looking at behind the screen, and I had them in my living room, these big sheets, and I was creating this whole course. And the next line is, you will be lied to. And my son and daughter-in-law came over, and they're like, you will be lied to, Mom? Really? I go, oh, 100%. 100%. And everybody who would walk into my living room and would see that, they'd be like, wow. For some reason, that everybody's eyes landed on that line. And so, yes, you will be lied to. The question is trying to figure out who's lying and why. And just make sure it's not you. I mean, we have a temptation to just lie, either because we're caught in something we don't want to get caught in, or like, have you been talking to Johnny about this? And you're like, no. Yes. Right. So just make sure that you're not the liar, and understand that people lie for all sorts of reasons. Either they think they're in trouble. I've seen people lie to intentionally get other people in trouble. I don't operate that way. So when I see it, I'm horrified. But apparently it happens all the time. So just understand that people will lie. They're going to lie to you. They're going to lie to their bosses. They're going to lie to the legislatures. And so know that's coming, and watch for it, and try to figure out why a person would do that. And so the other reason that it's important to know that is so that you document every single thing that happens. You might want, I have so many. Every time I clean my office, I come across like all these different types of books and things. I have so many of these things because I have this habit of I write everything down. Whether I can find it again is another question. But keep a log. January 4th, 7:10, telephone call to, telephone call from. What'd they say? Right. So just have it, and you have it. And you keep every email, right? It's easy to keep your emails. And this was fantastic. I had another youth suicide prevention program. A local people did a fundraiser, and then never turned the money. It happens, right? And so when I contacted them about it, they said, "Oh, I hope you didn't think that was all for you, for the youth suicide prevention program. That was not our intention." And so I replied with a photo that I had taken of a huge banner that said 100% of the proceeds go to the youth suicide prevention program. And so then they were able to, they finally, and I think a lot of it was just wasn't theft, it was just mismanagement. And so then they finally turned in all these checks that were well over 6 months old, and the people could no longer, a lot of them, they just couldn't be honored. And so the administration had to kind of call everybody and say, listen, we have this check, we just got it. And they were like, oh no, there's no money in there for that anymore. So here's what I'm saying: document, right? Document, and understand that people are human, and they will participate in a way that that may not be the way that you do. And so keep track of everything. Keep track of who said what. If there's a person that is consistently inaccurate in their memory, just choose not to participate with them anymore. Which means my next point, which is you may lose people. You may lose people, you may gain people in any type of moving forward. If you think that somebody is really, if you think that something is really important, losing people is part of that process, where people that don't want to be involved in that, people who are not willing to go down with that ship, and you are. And so you may very well lose people. It happens. You may also gain people. That happens too. But the only way that it's really going to be bad for you is if you are really obnoxious, and you're the liar, you're the person that can't be trusted, you're the people nobody wants to be on a committee with anymore, because you're irrational and unreasonable. There's just no need for that. So just over the course of time, advocacy is cumulative. I'm telling you. I've been at it long enough that people know how to spell my last name. Let's just say that, right? So it's cumulative. My reputation is cumulative. When I screw up, I acknowledge it. I apologize. When I'm serious about something, I make a big deal out of it. I know how to make a big deal out of stuff, and I'm very selective out of what I make a big deal out of. I have made a national deal out of stuff, and it has been effective. I don't do that often because it takes an exorbitant amount of energy. But what I will say is that, for instance, as I talked about the feedback that I gave via email this morning, it's not new. Like, people are going to know. It's not going to be shocking to get that information, because it's not new information, and they absolutely will know exactly who it came from, even if it was submitted anonymously, which I did not request. So that's all I'm saying, is just be aware that when it comes to relationships, your behavior is going to impact the relationship just as much as the people around you. And document everything, always. That's my final word. Document everything, always. All right. So let's talk about your homework now for January. I want you to actually make a flow chart. I don't care what it looks like. I love the big giant paper. I've got so much big giant paper that people make fun of me. But also, people recognize that when Mary pulls out the big paper and the pens, there's something that happens in my brain that it just comes out of my end of my hand onto the paper in a way that is organized and wonderful. So I don't care what you do, but make a flow chart of the people that are involved. How are they connected with each other? How are they connected with you? And how do they impact the situation? I don't care if it's from a financial perspective, if it's from a power broker perspective, if it's from an HR, structure. I don't care, but figure out so that you have all the players and you kind of know who's responsible for what, because you don't want to go to the DMV to pay your property taxes, right? And then fill in the gaps of your history of this, of your knowledge of this. How did this happen? How did this particular situation that you've decided is not acceptable come to be? Find out and follow up on loose ends and loose trails. Like, my cousin's married to her neighbor. Follow up on that stuff and find out what, how did this happen and what was going on, and know the history of the situation, know the politics of the situation. And then the other thing I would really invite you to do, it's the bonus, is to do a SWOT analysis. If you're not sure what a SWOT analysis is, it's this: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Just Google SWOT analysis, and this came up. It took me 5 minutes to cut and paste these over here. There are so many of them, and there's so many tools out there that'll help you do this, whether it's internal to your agency, whether it's personal, whether it's whatever it is. But it's internal and external: strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. And so it's just kind of good to understand, again, to give you the big picture so that you can make a decision. What am I willing to do? How am I going to know when I'm done? And what am I willing to go through to get there? It's really important for you to know all that. Now, this is one tool, a SWOT analysis. I would really invite you to find a tool that helps you with this situation. If it's not a SWOT analysis, it could just be, maybe you just like to doodle, or maybe you like to make lists. I don't care, but do something to help you analyze the situation and get it out of your head and onto paper. That's the important part, is when your eyes look at it, it changes. I don't understand brain chemistry, but I do know that when you get it out of your head, you get it on paper, it takes on a different sense. And so then you can, you can predict objections, and you have an answer for that. You've prepared for that objection. Well, we just can't afford that this year. Well, actually, you had a $10,000 surplus this year over here because we didn't have any snow. So the snow removal budget is really extra, and we could absolutely use that money to pay for this issue, right? So prepare for the objectives, understand what it is, understand the politics of what's involved. Why is somebody constantly saying no to you when it makes no sense to why they're saying no? It's such a simple thing. It's not a big deal. What are the politics? Here's an instance. The big giant glass, this pre-COVID, big giant glass around receptionists. Oh my God, I hate it. I hate it, right? Because people are having to lean over and talk to you through the bottom of the glass, the hole of the glass. So horrible, so disrespectful. It just violates so many guiding principles of recovery. And yet every healthcare agency has it up. Why? So part of when I do a workshop called Bringing Hope to Every Interaction, and it's for receptionists, it's for non-clinical personnel. And so we talk about how do you infuse recovery into your work. And we also talk about body language and that kind of stuff. And so I was an agency that was working, that did this with me regularly, and they started taking down the barriers around. And you know who got the most upset? The old school receptionists that had it there forever. So that's understanding the power structure. That's understanding the politics and the psychology. That structure separated them from me. And it made it so that they were on the safe side. I'm on the dangerous side. They're on the authority side. I'm on the authority side. They're over here on the asking for help side. Really clear boundary, really clear. And so it was very unsettling for some of those really long-time employee receptionists to let go of those barriers. Understanding that that's going to happen, understanding the politics, you can then prepare for that. And then understanding why those people have that position, because it could be that at some point in their work, they were attacked by somebody. Makes perfect sense that glass saved their ass, right? So they want that glass there. And so being able to help them understand that position and still respecting that position and hopefully being able to meet their needs in another way is going to be really important. And then always, in order to do that, you got to have a solution ready. So this is something that somebody taught me. It was my sister years ago. Don't ever bring a problem forward unless you have a solution to it. So if you're going to go to your boss, to your policymaker, to your whoever, your landlord, if you're coming forward with a problem, have a couple of different solutions that they could choose from, or that could at least help them start thinking in terms of what it is that you think an appropriate solution is going to look like. All right. That's everything that I have on advocacy as far as understanding the issue. That's section number 3. But I kind of want to pop this slide up here again and just tell you about Holding the Hope, who we are, what we do. Check out these websites, right? Particularly the Peer Support Training Center. We have so many on-demand trainings. If you go to the holdingthehope.com shop, we have wrap posters that were designed by a peer, a wrap trainer who created the posters. And he was an advanced level facilitator, and he created those posters that are used at all the wrap trainings. They're awesome, and they're basically at cost is what I send them, is what I sell them for, and they're so awesome. And so there's just so many resources that we have that we've developed over the years. I'm excited to bring it forward, and I hope that you'll take a minute to check this all out. And then in February, we're starting our next cohort of recovery alignment. So that's exciting as well. Thank you so much for sticking around. Oh, look, everybody's gone. Not everybody. Hi, Gloria. So thank you so much for sticking around and for being a part of this training. It was really fun for me to be able to kind of just go through all these different pieces and all these different concepts. Yay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Gloria. Bye.